For as long as modern economics has been discussed in public, one belief has echoed louder than almost any other. If you print money, you get inflation. It sounds so simple, so logical, so intuitive, and yet, the deeper you look, the more you realize this seemingly obvious idea is completely wrong or, at least, nowhere near as right as most people think it is. History reveals something deeply strange and deeply inconvenient. There have been many moments when governments printed enormous amounts of money, and inflation simply didn't show up. Prices did not rise. Economies did not collapse. Currencies did not evaporate. And in other moments when governments barely printed anything at all, inflation exploded like wildfire. How could such contradictions exist? If printing money always causes inflation, why doesn't the real world behave like the theory? This is the contradiction most economists avoid confronting. This is the nuance social media never explains. This is the myth politicians weaponize to influence public opinion. And this is the truth we are going to rewind today. Before we open the vault, I want you to consider a question, one that might change how you understand your entire financial reality. What if inflation isn't caused by money printing, but by something far more complicated, something deeper, more invisible, more powerful, something that has shaped economies for over 400 years? Welcome back to the Economic Rewind Vault, where we uncover the real forces behind history's biggest financial myths. And if learning how the world actually works, not how people casually claim it, helps you navigate your financial future, consider subscribing so you never miss the truths that matter before the next economic shock strikes. Let's begin. Our story starts in 2020. Governments around the world printed more money in a single year than in the previous decade combined. Experts predicted hyperinflation. Commentators predicted the collapse of the US dollar. Pessimists predicted global catastrophe. But weeks passed, then months, and inflation did not explode. For almost a full year, nothing happened. The money supply soared, yet prices remained calm. How? To understand this puzzle, rewind to Japan. Since the 1990s, Japan has been printing money aggressively. The central bank purchased bonds, assets, no country had ever printed more. And the result? Not inflation. Deflation. For nearly 30 years, printing money and prices falling. How is that possible? Rewind again to the US during the 2008 financial crisis. The Federal Reserve created nearly $4 trillion, unthinkable at the time. Economists warned of inevitable inflation. Gold advocates predicted the dollar's demise within a decade. But what happened? No explosion of prices. No collapse. Instead, some of the lowest inflation rates in a generation, lasting more than 10 years. So once again we must ask, if money printing always causes inflation, why does history say otherwise? Travel now to the 1970s. This time, inflation truly did spiral out of control. But here comes the twist: money printing during the 1970s was lower than in many other decades. If printing wasn't the cause, then what was? The answer lies not in the money printers, but in geopolitical tensions, oil shocks, price controls, currency devaluations, demographic pressures, supply shortages, social unrest, and a global energy crisis. Inflation arose not from the printing itself, but from everything surrounding it. Now go further back to the infamous Weimar hyperinflation of 1920s Germany. In this case, money printing played a role, but only because the government was printing in desperation to pay debt denominated in foreign currency. While the economy collapsed, while confidence vanished, while foreign nations demanded gold, the printing was not the root cause, was the final symptom of a dying system. The collapse of national confidence came first. Zimbabwe, Venezuela, Yugoslavia. The pattern repeats. Every hyperinflationary episode shares 5 ingredients. Not one: economic collapse, political collapse, currency devaluation, supply failures, and only at the end money printing as a reaction. Not the original spark. Printing money was the bandage, not the fire. Why, then, Do people still believe printing money automatically causes inflation? Because the human brain prefers simple stories. They printed money, so prices rose is emotionally satisfying. It makes the world feel predictable, but reality refuses to obey simplicity. The real truth is this: inflation is not a printing problem. Inflation is a confidence problem. If people trust the currency, printing can happen without inflation. Japan proved it. The US proved it. Europe proved it. But when people lose trust, when fear spreads, when savings evaporate, when expectations shift, then even tiny amounts of money printing can set off enormous inflation. Inflation is psychology. Inflation is expectation. Inflation is fear. And this is the part of the story most textbooks quietly ignore. So why did the world face inflation in 2021 and 2022? Not because of money printing, but because the world experienced one of the greatest supply chain breakdowns in modern history. Global shipping froze. Factories shut down. Oil prices surged. Semiconductors vanished. Labor shortages spread. Demand returned faster than capacity could recover. Entire industries broke at the same time. This was not monetary inflation. This was supply shock inflation, the kind the world hasn't seen since World War II. Yet the myth persisted: printing money did this. People said even though the data disagreed. Rewind. Again. During the Great Depression, the US raised interest rates, cut spending, and reduced the money supply, doing everything. Conventional economics recommends what happened. Prices collapsed. Deflation spread. Unemployment exploded. The crisis deepened. Money printing wasn't the cause. A lack of money was. After World War II, the US printed enormous amounts to rebuild the world. But instead of inflation, the economy boomed. Workers prospered. Innovation accelerated. America entered the greatest economic expansion in its history. Why? Because confidence was high. Production soared, trust stabilized prices. Inflation is a story of trust, not printers. Today, many believe prices rose simply because governments printed too much. But that illusion hides a more complex truth: broken supply lines, surging post-lockdown demand, geopolitical tensions, energy panic, corporate markups, war, and fear all collided to create inflation. Without these forces, printing alone would not have produced the inflation the world just experienced. So what is the truth? Printing money can cause inflation, but printing money alone does not. Inflation is the result of multiple forces converging: psychology, trust, supply chains, energy, labor markets, politics, and global stability. To say printing money causes inflation is like saying rain causes floods. Yes, but only if the river is already swollen, the ground is saturated, and the storm lasts long enough. Inflation is a storm. Money printing is only the rain. If this changed how you see economics, consider subscribing to the Economic Rewind Volby, because understanding the truth makes you harder to scare, harder to deceive, and harder to manipulate. And in the next episode of Money Myths Rewind, we confront one of today's most controversial beliefs: national debt will bankrupt a country. Is it true, or is national debt the most misunderstood tool in government finance? The answer will surprise you. See you in the next Rewind.